And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the man I'm having sex with, Robert Anderson, anchor and chief spokesman for Watt Channel 4 in Jacksonville. I stopped recording at this point. The speaker was a tall, red-haired woman wearing a tight red evening dress, cut low enough to show off some of her delicious breasts, and from another angle, a low cut back. The red color highlighted her ruddy skin and thick mane of hair that went down almost to her waist. There was nothing unusual in her expression, except for a slight smile, as if she had made a joke that she expected her audience to appreciate. I wondered what the joke was if a married woman openly admitted to having sex with a man she wasn't married to in front of 500 influential people from across the country. The fact that Roxanne Hunter was my wife made it even more interesting. Bobby Carroll, who knew she was my wife, grinned at me and said, "I told you she said that, Tommy. But that's not the funniest part. Play the tape." Will there be something funnier there? Turn it on. I sat in front of the monitor and looked at my friend. It was surreal, but Bobby wouldn't have laughed if he didn't think it was funny. I pressed the play button. As soon as the words left her mouth, she looked up from the papers in front of her on the conference room lectern at the Westin Snowmass Resort near Aspen, Colorado. She glanced at the audience, and the camera caught her glassy expression as it probably dawned on her what she had said. Even for the dark-skinned redhead of her Mexican mother, the blush spreading across her cheeks, upper chest, and back was clearly noticeable. A quick panning shot of the audience showed stunned expressions and a few beginning smiles. OMG, that didn't sound right. What I meant to say is that this is a man that I would love to have sex with, as would 99% of you ladies and most of the female population of Jacksonville, where he and I are from. Let's be honest. There's a reason he's the biggest presenter, big oh my God. She turned to the blonde man sitting next to her on stage and said, "Please, Robert, come up here before I dig my own grave with my words and destroy your marriage. Help me." He pushed back his chair and stood to his full height, 6 inches taller than her 5 foot 10 inches. He was a big guy. He stood next to her for a moment, then hugged her and kissed her on the cheek, prompting cheers and whistles, mostly from women in the crowd. I wish I knew about sex, Rox. I would have had more fun. At these words, the audience burst into laughter. I get it. Typically, literacy events, wherever they were held, for educators, policymakers, and anyone else trying to reduce illiteracy rates, were respectable, sober, and inspiring. Cheerful, not very often in fact, never at all. It was a little different, with educators from all over the country, mostly from major cities, gathering in the pleasant atmosphere of Aspen before Christmas as a kind of reward for their good work over the past year. Probably 99% of them have never heard of Roxanne or Anderson. I was sure that after enjoying the evening, they would head out to bars around town, party, and maybe do a little skiing the next day, not a typical environment for a literacy event. Standing in front of the audience, Anderson was calm, confident, and sexy. It was easy to see why WJXT had nearly regained its former dominant position in the Jacksonville, Northeast Florida television market, taking away some of my channel's audience, WJXT 12. He was a tasty morsel for women. All presenters, whether men or women of course, were like that. You no longer saw ugly presenters. The only relatively unattractive employees you saw on television were the reporters on the ground, and even some of the good ones were fired around town for being too fat, too old, or just plain boring in front of the camera. It was unfair, but that was life. It was business. Everyone knew that Anderson was only here temporarily. He really was a good journalist who rose from the position of field reporter instead of jumping to the position of anchor from journalism school due to his good looks and sex appeal. Networks are always looking for smart and sexy people. He won't stay here longer than a year if he stays at all. Anderson looked at the audience with that look that told every woman, every person that he was speaking to them personally. Then he looked at Roxanne again. She blushed, and I thought something had passed between them, but maybe it was because I was angry. He looked again at the audience and said, "I'm sure this will be news to you, but the fair Miss Hunter's husband, Tommy Hunter, is the news director for our competitor, Channel 12, in the great city of Jacksonville, Florida, where I enjoy working. As much as I, as a competitive journalist, would like to annoy Mr. Betterman Hunter, I can assure him that I had no dealings with his wife. He looked straight into the camera, and I knew this son of a bitch was talking straight to me. It's not that I wouldn't want to annoy him, but if I had the chance, I would definitely remember it, but I don't. Although I must admit that I may have pleasant dreams in the future. He looked down at his notes, and when he looked up again, hot and sexy had been replaced with sincere and serious, and he began, "But all jokes aside, we are here tonight for a very serious reason. There are thousands of people in our community, in communities across the country, from the poorest to the richest, who simply cannot read a bottle label, a prescription, or the directions for taking a medicine. They will be, or are, disabled throughout their lives because they lack one basic skill to survive in the modern world. They cannot read. We are here today to thank each and every one of you for your efforts in solving this problem." From that moment on, it was a sincere, routine, and serious speech, like the rest of the evening. I saw fragments of it. We traded coverage in certain situations, and not just on big stories. It would have been too expensive for both stations to send commands, but since we weren't expecting anyone to get shot or there to be explosions, Channel 4 had nothing to lose by sharing the footage. We would repay this favor. I watched snippets, although I didn't see much of Roxanne. My job was to keep an eye on what the other stations were doing because it was still about a local person and a beautiful local woman. Roxanne went as a representative of her employer, who was an active supporter of the literacy campaign. She flew out on Friday afternoon and surprised me by returning early Sunday morning. I've never seen this part before. The footage released by Channel 4 began with Anderson giving an official speech, which I didn't think much of because he was the reason Channel 4 was covering the event. Even beyond the costs, I would not send a team. Our top cameraman was still dealing with the loss of his wife and child in a head-on collision 3 months ago. I treated him very carefully, not only because we were friends, but also because he was good, very good. Worldly people think that cameramen just point the camera and shoot. They don't have the slightest idea. It was on tape that Channel 4 made. They didn't use it on air because they're a family station, but they kept it as a sort of bad take reel. You know how cameramen gossip, and I heard really good things about it. Fragment and convinced a friend to make me a copy. It's funny as hell, isn't it? I looked at him, and it seems to me that he began to guess. Would you think it was funny, too, if Carol walked into a party and told everyone she was having sex with another guy? For God's sake, Tommy, it's not the same thing. She joked about wanting to sleep with him. Hell, half the women in Jacksonville feel the same way, and if the rumors are to be believed, a lot of them actually did it. It was a joke. Everyone laughed. Look at the tape. She was not guilty, embarrassed, but not guilty, and he would have to be the best actor in the world to react the way he did. Maybe she was thinking about sleeping with him. I'm sure she was thinking, but fantasizing about sleeping with someone is not the same as doing it. Hell, if it was, every guy on this station would sleep with Christina and half of it. One of them would have gotten divorced by now. Christina D'Alessandro, who went by the television name Dallas, was the host of the morning show. 26 years old, with straight black hair and high cheekbones from her American grandmother, along with breasts that evoked guilty fantasies in every married man at the station except me. But I understood what he was saying. When was this filmed, Bobby? This literacy event was a month ago, mid-December. I've never heard of it. Everyone was talking about it, but everyone took it as a joke. Obviously, Rox was embarrassed. She probably thought you would react the way you did. I think she knows you better than I do. I thought you'd laugh over this. You have no reason to be sensitive. Damn, Carol joked a couple of times about having an open ticket to try you. If I were the jealous one, I guess Rox brags about you when the women get together. I just looked at the monitor. I stopped it at Anderson's smiling face. Bobby was right. It was probably just an accidental Freudian slip. She was thinking about sleeping with him, and the words came out, and she turned it into a joke with his help. I couldn't blame her for her fantasies. I was 40. She was 38. We had only been married for 8 years. I was everywhere. Hell, one of the reasons I got into television was because while I might not get the variety that singers and rock stars enjoy, men on television still got pretty high traffic from women. I've been through a lot of casual relationships and slept with some women in Jacksonville, which would raise a lot of eyebrows if it were ever known, and some of them were married. But I was a bachelor, and I never drove a woman into bed with illegal substances. Alcohol is another matter. I've had a lot of women get there because they were too drunk to use their best judgment. But damn, they were all over 21, and if they decided to get drunk and forget they were married, I didn't think it was my responsibility. Shortly before I got married, I got involved with the hottest woman I had ever met until I met Rox. Blonde with incredible breasts, I came across her while doing a story about real estate. She was a realtor and almost convinced a confirmed bachelor to consider looking for a home. We saw each other for 3 months. She was married to some insurance guy, but she said that didn't mean she couldn't try something new on the side. Okay, she cheated and I helped her, but I wasn't the world's moral policeman. I knew Rox was already in a relationship. It's impossible to be like her at 30 and not have several men. I knew more than a few because I was a reporter before I became a director, and I checked her out. She was an executive at the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain on Amelia Island, which put her in the path of many rich, horny men, and she tried a lot. We ended up in my bed after a news media meeting, and then she kept coming back to me again and again, and she admitted to me that she was scared because she had never felt that way about another man. A few months later, I admitted that I just wasn't happy when I wasn't around her, not just for sex, but just being with her, going to the movies or walking on the beach in St. Augustine or Pont Vedra. Of course, it all ended with us ending up in bed. However, unlike all the other women I've ever dated, dating wasn't something I had to go through to get into bed. One night, while walking along the beach near St. Augustine, as the waves crashed a few feet away from us with a rising tide, I realized that just walking next to her and hearing her voice and laughter was enough to make me happy. If we ended up in bed, that would be great, but I didn't need it. I told her how I felt, and we walked and talked until dawn. Then we came back to my place, got into bed, and just snuggled up to each other. We didn't need sex. We both realized it was real and got married 3 months later. As I was thinking about all this, I looked at the big clock above the monitors. It was 7 p.m., and we had long since finished preparing for our local Thursday evening newscast. January 26, 2012, the holidays have passed and life has returned to its January routine. Casey Martin will anchor the nightly newscast, and I'll be back at 8 a.m. to prepare for the next evening's 90-minute local newscast. Come on, buddy, let me buy you a beer, and then we can go back to our loving wives, Bobby said, giving me a worried look. Thanks, Bobby, but not today. I have a few last things to finish, and then I'll go home. Tommy, dude, you're okay, aren't you? It was just a joke that went wrong, that's all. I can be an idiot sometimes. I shouldn't have shown that to you. Carol always says I'm an idiot, maybe she's right. I reached out and hit his arm hard enough to make him wince. Okay, you're an idiot. You pulled it out of me, but I'm not mad about the tape. Honestly, I know it was a bad joke. I have other things on my mind. Network bosses are pushing us to do an evaluation, Christina, and I'm not sure she's ready enough to move forward. I want to give her a chance, but I'm just not sure she's ready. Of course, the station manager, Nick Carnos, will make the decision, but we've worked together a long time, and he trusts my judgment about the talent on screen. If we promote it and it flops, it will reflect poorly on both Nick and me, and we both have hopes for a future outside of Jacksonville. However, if I don't promote her, I know it will break her heart. She's a really nice girl, and not the typical diva you'd expect from a woman with her looks. Please, please don't promote her. God knows how many men's hearts will be broken here. I know my sex life with Carol will suffer. Half the time I'm with Carol, I fantasize about Christina. For God's sake, don't talk about it, Rox. The women are talking, and Carol will kill me if she finds out. Get out of here, Bobby. My lips are sealed. Let me finish so I can go home to Rox. When he left, I went into the archives and pulled out all the film I could find from that event, in addition to the raw film that wasn't shown on Channel 4. We usually record other stations' coverage to make sure we don't miss anything. Using the computer, I found every second filmed that night. In fact, other than his speech, there wasn't much footage of my wife and Anderson. I watched the moment when they exchanged looks after her slip of the tongue. I couldn't read it, although I watched a lot of tapes. But there was something there. I just couldn't understand it. I watched the rest of the meeting on tape. It was incredibly boring, with tons of footage of people walking up to the podium, accepting awards and thanking their loved ones for their support. Among all this, I found two more points. The first was before her introduction. This was a shot from afar as Anderson walked into the room with his arm around my wife's waist. They were talking, and she was laughing when they entered. She leaned towards him and whispered something in his ear. At the same time, she touched his hand, as a woman does when she knows you well or wants to get to know you better. When I saw the look on his face, I knew he was sleeping with her. It was anti-culminating after that, but I continued to watch. There was a moment when the camera was focused on some teacher standing at the microphone with an award. It would have been just a few minutes before Rox introduced him as the keynote speaker. Behind them, I saw how Rox and the Andersons sit and pick at their plates. It only took a second, but the camera caught him as he gently swiped a piece of something from her bottom lip. A moment later, she laughed softly and looked at him lovingly. Then her eyes slid up to the audience and the cameraman, and she jerked and pulled away from him. It wouldn't hold up in court, but there's no way two strangers or even casual friends would behave like that. It was the behavior of two people who know and love each other very well, but she never mentioned it to me, and I knew that they had no reason to know each other so well. My mobile phone rang. I looked Rox. Hello. Where are you, honey? It's almost 9. Is something going on at the station? She still worked at the Ritz, but on a Monday to Friday schedule, with no official days off, although she was often called in on weekends. She commuted from her home in Mandarin to Amelia Island and back every weekday, so she usually didn't get home until 7 or 8 p.m. I was usually home before her, with something to eat, whether it was bought along the way or defrosted. Just working late on a project. You're a little late. Where were you? Oh, we had to work a little longer. And then Jen and Cassandra wanted to stop for a drink at a new place, right before getting off on 95. Great drinks, and they have these delicious young waiters bringing drinks. Jen and Cassandra played a game of taking off their bras in the bathroom to see who could get the waiter interested the fastest. Jen was single and Cassandra was divorced from her abusive husband, and Rox loved to tell me stories about all the crazy things they did as single women. She said it makes me hotter when I get home. The silence dragged on. You must be very tired. Don't you even want to know who won the competition? Not really. I guess I'm really tired. Can you heat up something in the microwave? I'll be home in an hour. I just want to grab something to eat and then go to bed. If I spread a little whipped cream in certain places, is there a chance you'll eat it too? I don't think so, Rox. I'm really tired. You're not getting my best option. Can I wait for another time? The silence lasted longer. I was 40 years old and working crazy hours, and there were times when I just wasn't in the mood. She respected this because she knew when the work became too hard for her, and I didn't push her, but it didn't happen very often. Okay, Tommy, would you like me to give you a back massage or something? Maybe a stiff drink? No, not today. Just eat a little and then sleep. Do you mind if your loving wife snuggles up to you while you fall asleep? I always sleep better next to you. Baby, tonight is one of those nights where I need sleep. If you don't mind, I'll go to the guest bedroom. That way I can sleep without disturbing you, and you can work without worrying about me. This has never happened before. Tommy, what happened? Did I do something? What's going on? Nothing. Just leave it for today, okay? See you when I get home. Then I just hung up. This had never happened before either, but then I never knew for sure that she was cheating. I made copies of important parts of the film. It wouldn't matter because it wouldn't have any effect in court, but I'd need them for those nights when I'd try to convince myself that it was all my imagination, that Rox couldn't have done this to me. Because even now I wanted to make myself believe that I was wrong, but I knew that I was not. When I walked into our condominium, she was sitting by the window built into the back wall of our first-floor living room. This window was the reason we bought it. I couldn't count the nights we lay on the carpet in front of that window and made love under the stars. She stood up from her chair and walked over to me before I reached the counter separating the kitchen and living room. She hugged me and wrapped her incredible body around me before trying to kiss me. For the first time in our lives together before and after marriage, I turned my face away so she kissed my cheek and let her hold me. I didn't hug her. She hugged me again. Slowly, she stepped back and looked at me as if she didn't recognize me. "I'm really tired. Did you heat something up?" "Chinese beef with broccoli. Would you like me to make you a plate?" "It's okay. I'll do it myself. I'll go to the guest room, eat something, and go to bed." She reached out one slender hand and touched my shoulder, as if I were a fragile crystal that could break. The image of her placing her hand on Anderson's shoulder in the same gesture, full of love and possession, flashed through my mind, and she must have seen something on my face. She removed her hand and stepped back. "Tommy, what's going on? I know something's wrong. Don't tell me everything's fine. You're scaring me." I looked into her eyes, and even now I couldn't believe that what I knew was true had happened. For one tiny fraction of a second, I wanted to pretend that I could survive this. We could go on, and I would forget I ever saw that recording of that meeting. I would resist the urge to stalk her, check her phone, or read her email for secret accounts and love messages. I would put it behind me, force myself to forget, and someday, the denial would become the truth, and it would all be over. Then it would be as if it never happened. It only lasted the slightest fraction of a second. You cannot ring a bell and not hear it ring. I could never forget what I had seen, what I now knew. I don't know how long this went on, but there must have been times when she came to me from his bed. I looked into her eyes, and she seemed to be the same woman I had planned to grow old with. But now she was not the same woman, and never would be again. I had to look away because otherwise I would have burst into tears like a baby. I felt the same way I did when I was 7 years old, when my mother held my hand at my father's funeral. She told me that he had gone to heaven and would never come back, just like now the woman I loved was gone, and she would never come back. I turned away from her, feeling my eyes fill with tears. I went to the guest room. I forced myself to say the words, "I'm not hungry. I just need to sleep. We can talk tomorrow." I felt the power of her gaze on my back as I walked away. I walked into the guest room, the least used room in the house. He closed the door behind him and locked it. Then I undressed, set the alarm for 5 a.m., and laid my head on the pillow. I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep, but the lie became reality. I lay there for no more than a couple of minutes when everything disappeared, and then only a few seconds passed before the alarm went off. Being unconscious was a blessing. I didn't have to think about anything. When I woke up, my mind was clear. Sometimes it happens. Without any knowledge, I came to terms with reality, with the death of my marriage and the fact that I would now be alone. Oh, not quite alone. There were too many women, and I still had hair and could have sex pretty well. My bed will not remain empty. But none of them will be Rox. I wanted to leave before she woke up, but no luck. She knew my schedule and came out of our bedroom staggering, her red hair disheveled, barefoot, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked nothing like the carefully prepared Roxanne she presented to the world. I would die for this rumpled stranger if she were still mine. I stepped back and went into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. She snuck inside as I undressed and got into the shower, closing the sliding door behind me and turning the hot water on full blast. I shivered as the cold water washed over me, but after a few seconds it began to heat up and soon became scalding hot, just the way I like it. After a few seconds she came inside. I rejected her. No, Rox, I don't have time for this. I have a lot to do at the station, and I can't play here. We'll catch up tonight, I promise. She looked at me, and I think she must have known, but couldn't ask me without opening a can of worms. She had to maintain the lie that nothing had changed, that we were still a happy couple. Why won't you talk to me, Tommy? Because I have things on my mind. I just don't have time for it. Just go to work, do your thing, enjoy yourself, and we'll figure it all out later or someday. You've changed, Tommy. How could you change so much in one day? People change, Rox. Life is a process of change. Nothing stays the same. I thought you knew that. Who are you? I could ask you the same thing. Who are you, Rox? Are you the same woman I married, who said she would love and cherish me and be faithful to me for the rest of our lives? At this point, the tears began to flow, and she retreated and walked out of the shower. I closed the shower door behind her and continued to wash myself, preparing for the most important day of my life. I finished my shower, stepped out, quickly ran the electric razor through my stubble, and walked into the master bedroom. She was lying on our bed. She didn't look up when I walked in and went to the closest to pick out an outfit for work. I dressed relatively casually in trousers and a nice Hawaiian shirt. The news editor doesn't interact with the public or advertisers. With white tennis shoes and short socks, I was ready to go and was about to leave when she said, "No matter what you think, no matter what you hear, Tommy, I want you to know that I love you. That will never change. You should know this." How can I know that, Rox? There was no answer when I left her. When I got to the station, I knew what I was going to do. I called Sam Gold, who was the deputy news director and usually didn't work until the next day. He grumbled when I asked him to come in and do a double shift, but I offered to work any 2 weekends he chose for him. I don't think I'll have any really important weekend plans for the rest of the year. It will probably be good to work as many weekends as possible. I then told Martin that Gold would be there in an hour, and I would be off on a personal project. No questions. Once Gold arrived and was up to date, I left and headed to my office. I needed to think, make some personal calls, check emails, and make plans. At noon, Robert Anderson's private and very personal email received a message with the text, "You and that prostitute Roxanne Hunter were very careless. There are pictures of you sleeping with her. You should have been more careful. Cyclops." At 12:15 p.m., the following message arrived with a photo attached. "I know you're trying to get a job at the CBS affiliate in New York. How do you think they'll feel about a scandal involving you and another station official's wife using illegal substances? Do you think they're still interested? Cyclops." The accompanying photo was clearly photoshopped, but it showed a naked Anderson in bed with a naked Roxanne Hunter and a bowl containing a suspicious white powder. At 12:30 p.m., the following message arrived: "Time is ticking. Whether it's fake or not, there's ample evidence of what you and she did. Did you know that the new co-owner of the group that bought a majority stake in the flagship CBS station in New York is a very quiet but dedicated member of the moral majority and a devout Christian? How do you think he will react to this scandal?" At 13, a message arrived, sent through an electronic labyrinth of forwarded messages to Cyclops. "You're kidding. Leave me alone." At 1:15 p.m., the following message came to Anderson: "Let's see who can laugh last." At 14, Anderson sent a message to Cyclops: "You win. What do you want? How much do you want?" In response, "Not money. Just come to the conversation. Come to New Siam on Adams Street, opposite the bell tower, at 15. If you don't come by 15:15, I'll leave." At 15:10, Anderson entered New Siam and looked around. He didn't recognize anyone until I turned from my seat in the booth in the back and waved to him. "Hi, Robert. What are you doing here?" He stood there for a moment, then walked to the back and stood, looking down at me. "Do you understand that I have several friends from sheriff's departments ready to arrest you for extortion? Bring them if you're ready for a shitstorm apocalypse." Big words for a guy whose career is about to go down the toilet. You can't work in news anywhere else. I don't think so. What kind of threats did you receive? Telephone threats? Did anyone demand money? I'd like to know why you're here threatening me. You know full well that. Emails telling me I need to be here so you don't spread false rumors and fake pictures of your wife and me. I just looked at him and enjoyed the moment. So you have electronic copies of messages supposedly from someone who is threatening you but not asking for anything. I wonder if that counts as extortion. Anyway, I just got the urge, no pun intended, to eat Thai food. If you're accusing me of being behind these messages, good luck getting proof. First of all, it's not me. Secondly, whoever it was, I'm sure he was aware of new technologies that make tracking the source of an email almost impossible, or at least very difficult. I know the police or FBI may eventually find this person, but I doubt they are willing to spend that kind of money or resources on an investigation just to convict someone for sending vague threats, if they even were threats. I have a feeling you and they will become international laughingstocks before this is over, but you can try since I had nothing to do with it. Then, when they fail and I am proven innocent, I blow the story up and see if the national press can pick it up. Then I sue you for trying to ruin my life so you can have my wife. It would be a great story, and you would look like a winner, for sure. A tall guy in a sheriff's uniform approached us. He pressed a button on his right ear, which made me assume they were recording our conversation outside. Jesus Christ, Anderson, you want us to launch a full-blown investigation, wasting who knows how many man-hours and our tech guys' time on possibly threatening emails. No demands for money. The guy is just mad because you're sleeping with his wife? Seriously. It's still extortion, Brady. Anderson, grow up. I only came with you because I was curious. I can imagine a government lawyer going full force against a respected news anchor over what might be a threat. He looked at Anderson, then at me. I'm turning away. Why don't you two go out to New Siam and beat each other up until you sort things out? That suits me, I said, and was not surprised to see Anderson shake his head, even though he was several inches taller than me. He couldn't afford to damage that perfect face. The policeman simply shook his head and said, Anderson, don't call me again about such trifles. Favors have their limits. He left. Anderson looked like he was about to leave when I said, don't leave or you'll regret it, trust me, and turn off the bug they gave you. I'm tired of your bullshit, Hunter. You're putting me through all this because of some fantasy about me and your wife. If you leave, Anderson, you'll regret it for a long, long time. You probably think I'm bluffing, but are you willing to take the risk? I just want to talk. Order a cup of wonton soup or something. He leaned back in the booth. I'm not hungry, but I'm intrigued. What are you up to? Okay, cards on the table. I heard this performance my wife gave you at a literacy night a month ago. I've also watched a lot of tape from that night. I have no doubt what's going on, but I have questions that I want answered. For you to answer. I don't need to answer your questions because nothing is happening. If you heard everything, you know it was a joke. She made a mistake, and I played it for laughs. You're really so unsure that you believe that what's going on. Anderson, look at me. I'm the news director. I've been here 15 years, and a lot of people owe me services. I also know where a lot of the bodies are buried, and I have a whole team of investigators. I don't know how long. You and she are dating, but if it didn't start on the night of the banquet, there is a trace. There are people who know something, but you weren't careful enough, and I will discover it. If you don't tell or lie to me today, when I find this, I will destroy you. There is a photograph, actually a series of photographs, showing you snorting illegal substances at a party 6 months ago taken secretly on a cell phone. You never knew about it, but they're real. They came to me, and I hid them because you're another news guy, and I didn't want to ruin your career just because you're stupid. You must understand that I know many people in networks on both coasts, people I have met and worked with. I will tell everyone that you are undisciplined in terms of illegal substances and sex. Being an anchor or having a high-profile position online is not the same as being in Hollywood. It doesn't add shine to your reputation. It makes you untrustworthy, and there are a lot of news directors and network people, guys in their 40s and 50s with young, beautiful wives, and they really don't want someone like you to have them. I may not stop you. You may be on a rocket to the top, but I will do anything to hurt you. He leaned back and looked at me as I laid out the situation. He didn't say a word and then finally said, "Unless." I sipped the hot green tea the waitress brought before Anderson arrived. "If you answer my questions honestly, I don't want to destroy you, although I will if I have to. I want to know how you and my wife met and what happened. Is it still going on? If you answer honestly, you will leave here, and I will forget about your existence. I am going to divorce her, but your name will never come up. I will keep it simple, irreconcilable differences. How can I trust you? You can say anything, and then if you get angry with me. Because I give you my word, and there are many people in this city who will say that it is reliable. I have never broken my word." He looked at me for a long time, then asked, "What is this? If it's green tea, call the waitress. I love it. I just didn't know they served it in a Thai restaurant. I've been eating here for a long time, and the owner is a friend of mine. He said not many people like it." After the waitress placed the pitcher and cup in front of him, he filled the cup with hot tea and took a sip. Finally, he looked at me and said, "It wasn't personal, man. I knew she was married to you. We even talked about it. But it just happened. How can I be sure you're telling the truth? You're a selfish enough bastard to claim things just to piss me off. How many people know that she has a small tattoo with the letter TH and an arrow right on the inside of her butt? It's not visible in a bikini. You can't see it. She got this tattoo 2 years ago. It made me very happy then." He took another sip. "We're at the Ritz a lot. News stories, meetings, conferences, and it's impossible not to notice her if you're around. She just stands out. So I started flirting a little. It was about a year ago after. When I first came here, she flirted back, but it was just for work. When you look like her and are in a position like that, it's part of the job, and I knew that, so I never expected anything. Something will happen. But over time, I realized that she was interested in me. I can't help the way I look, and I know how women react. So, after 3 months I tried, but she rejected me harshly. She even hit me in the face the first time this happened in a long time, and I thought that was it. There were a lot of other hot bodies interested in you. It was the looks, the body language. They move closer to you, touch your arm or forearm when they don't need to. That look they give you, or they put their hand on your knee when you're sitting together. She definitely gave signs, but I misinterpreted them. I walked her to the car after a late meeting and tried to kiss her. She hit me and said that she was married. She got into the car and drove away, leaving me with my nose, so to speak. I looked at it, and I could see it happening, playing out like a movie in my head, because I had received the same signs once upon a time. Suddenly, I wanted to leave, but I needed to know. A month or so later, we ran into each other again, and she was calm but fine. Then it got better. Then the night there was a big conference of North American ad executives, there was a cocktail party and a dance. I was representing the station. She was there. And we both drank. I asked her to dance. This time she didn't pull away, so I asked her if she wanted to get some fresh air. We walked out into the parking lot, then stepped off the concrete onto the grass, which was uneven. She lost her balance, and I caught her. Losing mine, we both had quite a lot to drink. We fell on the grass, and this happened. Happened? We've been doing this. Have you been doing this? Yes. Is that enough? Not really. It didn't take long. Good thing, because within 15 minutes, one of the ad guy's wife and another ad guy who was not her husband almost walked into us. Luckily, we were already dressed, and she was smoking, so we had a reason to be there. Did she smoke? She smoked when we first got married, but after I nagged her for a couple of years, I thought she had quit. She said she quit, another lie. Yeah, she said she almost quit, But she was upset. She told me it was a big mistake and that we should forget it ever happened. I told her it was just talk. Usually, when women are with me, they don't forget. He noticed the look I gave him. What can I say? I'm tall and handsome, they say, and I like sex. There aren't usually many complaints. It's just the truth. Anyway, after a while, I wouldn't mind a second round. I thought that since we'd done that, we could continue, but she didn't want to. She left, and I didn't see her again that night. I tried to remember, and I remembered. It was in August, damn August 6 months ago. She had a big meeting, and around midnight, when I was starting to worry about her, she called. She sounded strange, like she was crying. She then said that she had drunk too much to drive home, so she would stay the night. The hotel always kept rooms for employees for such cases. I did not think about that. She came back the next day, and looking back, she was strangely depressed. Depressed is the word. She was usually loud. She was expressive, but she was quiet the next day. Looking back, I even asked her about it, and she simply said that she had drunk so much that she was still feeling the effects. I didn't push for sex, being a good, compassionate husband. She was quiet for a couple of days and then returned to her place. And what? A week later, she called me at the station saying she wanted to talk, and we met at Starbucks. She told me we had made a big mistake and that it should never happen again. She loves her husband. I asked her why she called me. She said she wanted to let me know that it won't happen again. He gave me a look that made me want to strangle him. When they tell you they want to meet up to tell you they won't have sex with you, you can be sure you'll sleep with them. We did it all over again. Then I realized that I should not have met him. Not only were we going to get a divorce, but all my memories of her from the moment we met until a few nights ago were ruined. It was as if someone had smeared mud on them all 8 years of my life. I had no other choice, until I heard him talk about being together and realized he was telling the truth. I was afraid I wouldn't have the courage to go through with it. I would look into those big brown eyes, she would cry and swear she loved me, and I wouldn't be able to stop myself from taking her back. I would try to force myself to forget, convince myself that we could get through this, and somehow glue our marriage together, go to counseling, do all those things that people do when they don't want to admit that the marriage or relationship is dead. But I would never trust her again. I would never forgive her. Over time, the marriage would rot, and sooner or later, no matter who pulled the trigger, we would separate. It would have happened very slowly and painfully instead of ending abruptly and quickly. How many times have you seen her? Where did you meet? Have you ever done this at our condominium? It started out pretty hot. Once she decided she was ready, she was totally ready. For the first few months, we met in parks, sometimes in small hotels where she would rent a room because no one knew her there, and I would sneak around. I couldn't afford to be recognized. But there were days when we wanted to spend the whole day together, so we needed a room. Why didn't you go to your house or to us? Or did you go? We couldn't risk going to my place. Too many people know me. And we couldn't go to your house because Rox wouldn't allow it. I suggested it a couple of times. Your place is pretty quiet, most people work, so there are not a lot of people looking out of the windows, and it would have been much more convenient, but Rox said no. She didn't discuss it. Your house was off limits. Was it just you two? He looked at me in surprise. You mean we were regular partners? Are you crazy? She's an amazing woman, but I saw her once a week or every 2 weeks at the most. I need more than that. I usually meet a couple of new women in a week, and they're usually one night. Some of them last longer than any of my partners in Jacksonville. She knew? He looked at me with a strange look. Do you think we were in love? That I had feelings for her or she for me? How can you be with someone for so long and not develop feelings for them or them for you? We were friends. I liked her, I like her, and the sex was great, but I never expected anything more. I know what you're saying, women can make it difficult, but she never did. She loved sex. She was hesitant, but in the end, I think she liked it more than regular sex. I was overcome by the thought of strangling him. I sat and tried to digest it all. Without love, without emotional connection. Only sex, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. How long did it last? Before the literacy dinner, she was really shocked when she made that mistake. She was sure that everyone would talk about it, and that somehow you would find out and leave her. I told her that she was worrying for nothing. This was a joke. Everyone laughed. I later found out it ended up in a bad take, but Channel 4 didn't air it. I asked the cameraman to cut it out of the recording sent to the station. It was too risky to ever air, and I think someone at Channel 4 who might know you thought she told you or didn't want to upset you. Anyway, she told me it was over at the end of dinner. We spent that Friday together in my room, but after dinner, no arguments. I didn't insist. I thought she'd calm down and we'd go back to our routine. November and December were not the same as in the beginning, but we still met once a week if we could. This time 2 weeks passed and not a word. Finally, she called me and said that it was all over. She was really scared, and this time she meant it, but I talked her into it one last time. We went to Atlanta, got a room, and stayed the night. We spent the night and morning in bed. Since then, it was the weekend. She was on a business trip to attend a tourism seminar in Atlanta. She told me that she would work all weekend and would see me when she returned. She was beaming and happy on Sunday evening when she returned, and we made love, and I had no idea that she had spent the previous 36 hours doing all this and more than we could do. And she told me she loved me with a completely straight face. I felt sick, as if there was anything solid in my stomach, it would rise. I drank some more hot tea. He leaned back and took a sip from his cup. That's all. I thought about asking him what other harm he could do to my world. It lay in ruins around me. My marriage was over, and so was my sense of self-worth, the last 10 years of my life, essentially, and probably my time in Jacksonville. I probably won't be able to advance in my career, but I will be able to take a lateral step. Job openings are always popping up at stations across the country. I could end up in Pagina, Oregon, or New York, but I could get a job somewhere. I've made a pretty good name for myself. I couldn't stay here. There are too many places where I could run into her, too many places where I would run into the memories we made together. It would be okay if I could convince myself that it didn't matter what happened. She was simply a very good partner in bed for a long time. However, it mattered because I still loved her, and, as I realized, would love her for a long time. I had lived 32 years of my life without knowing this kind of love, and I didn't know if I would ever find it again, but I was going to try damn hard. I didn't realize how empty my single life was until I met her. I thought my married friends moving back home to their wife and kids were crazy until it happened to me. As it turned out, we couldn't have children, but that didn't matter as long as she was there. Now she is gone. We have an agreement, don't we? There was a note of alarm in his voice. Maybe he finally heard what he said and realized the consequences. I wanted, with every ounce of bitterness, to hold it over him, to break my promise and do everything possible to ruin his career and try to ruin his promotion. Or just go outside, hit him on the sly, and break his damn perfect nose, but I gave him my word. Besides, if he was telling the truth, he didn't seduce her. I don't think he could do it. She spent 20 years scheming men and keeping them at arm's length to get what she wanted. I think she knew all the moves and approaches. She gave herself to him because she wanted to, so it's her fault. We have an agreement if you don't say a word to her today about our conversation. Why? I'm going to talk to her. After today, you can do whatever you want because she will be on the market again. But if I even suspect that you warned her, all guarantees will be gone. I will do everything possible to destroy you, and I'll probably catch you alone somewhere one day, and I won't just break your nose. I'll send you to the hospital for plastic surgery on what's left of your face. Do you understand me? He instinctively raised his hand to cover his face, his treasure. Got it. If she calls, I'm in a conference or on a mission. I won't say a word to her until I get permission from you. He stood up and started to walk away, then stopped and said, without turning around, it was never personal. It couldn't be more personal. Try to stay away from me. I'll try, but I can't honestly say that if I see you again, I might forget all my promises. I went home early. It was only 5 p.m., which meant I had rush hour to contend with, so I didn't get home until 6 when I walked through the door. She stood in the kitchen with a jug of sangria. She made it herself, buying fresh oranges, bananas, and strawberries and cutting them up to add to store-bought sangria. Hers was incomparably better. She glanced at me before pouring it into my glass. She already had her own glass from which she drank. Her hair was perfectly styled, flowing down her back in a fiery stream. She wore a tight, low-cut dress that accentuated her breasts, falling to her waist and hugging her figure. I knew that when she came out, her ass would look like a symphony. She had everything: breasts, waist, magnificent ass, and legs that went to the sky. She knew this and was fully prepared. She walked into the living room with 2 glasses. I took one and walked over to the sofa. She started to sit next to me, but I motioned to a chair nearby. She understood. She understood and sat down. We drank sangria. I really loved her. "Are you going to tell me what's wrong?" she finally asked. "You know, don't know. Are you going to think I'm a complete idiot? Are you going to insult me on top of everything else? I've been going crazy all day trying to figure out what happened between yesterday morning when you said goodbye and I love you and last night when you walked in the door and hated me. I'd give you credit if you'd at least be honest, Rox. I'd be honest if I knew what you're talking about." She almost cried. "Okay," I said, sighing. "It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. At least the most painful one. I know about you and Robert Anderson." She knew it was coming, but it still shocked her. Her face turned pale, and she could not look me in the eyes. Me and Robert Anderson, presenter, on Channel 4. I started to lose my temper. "Oh, for God's sake, you bitch, stop pretending. You know exactly who he is. He's the guy you've been sleeping with for the last 6 months. He's the guy you spent the weekend with 3 weeks ago before you came home with a smile and tell me how much you love me." I couldn't sit still any longer. I stood up and didn't realize I had clenched my fists until she stumbled back with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Then again, she had never seen me so close to losing control. "He's the man you ruined our marriage for, Rox. He's the man who killed us. We're gone. I hope he makes you happy, or someone else does, because I'm not going to see you again after today. Evening." "Tommy, don't, please." I forced myself to retreat. I scared myself. I hated her, but I would never forgive myself if I hurt her in a fit of rage. I knelt down next to her and lowered my voice. "Just be honest with me, Rox. We were married for 8 years. I loved you. Don't I deserve honesty in the end? Just tell me. I don't know what people told you. It's not true. If you saw the tape, I know it looked bad. But that doesn't mean I slept with him. I fantasized about him. He's a handsome guy. But other than the kiss on the cheek, he never touched me, and I don't know who spread the lies about that seminar in Atlanta. But I can prove that I was present at all the meetings. I was not with Robert." For a moment, I did not see her behind the tears that filled my eyes. Even now, she couldn't be honest. That was the end. End with lies on lies. I stood up and walked away from her. I couldn't touch her anymore. I took the mini recorder out of my pocket and pressed play. "When they tell you they want to meet up to tell you they won't have sex with you, you can be sure you'll sleep with them. We got to my car and had sex." She looked at me, and I saw her brown eyes filled with tears. She looked like the doctor had given her a death sentence. "I'm going to be gone for a few hours. Don't be here when I get back. I honestly can't promise I won't hurt you if I see you again tonight." I walked out to her crying and screaming my name. When I returned, she was no longer there. She took 2 suitcases and emptied most of her belongings from her closets. She took my threat seriously. God bless. I stood in the center of what had once been our home, but was now just the condominium in which I lived. I wanted to curl up in the corner like a little child and cry, but I forced myself to go to the guest bedroom, set the alarm for early morning, take off my clothes, and lie down on the bed. Again, I thought that I would not be able to sleep, but sleep was like an escape, and after some time I fell asleep. I woke up on Saturday, and although I didn't have to, I went to the station. I called a lawyer friend of mine and got the name of a good divorce lawyer. Around 6 in the evening, Bobby called me on my cell phone and tried to persuade me to come to his house for a drink and eat a grilled steak. The invitation was for me and Rox. I didn't say anything to him on the phone, but when I walked in, he and Carol immediately began to treat me like someone who had survived a terrible car accident. And maybe it was. There was no point in hiding it. I told them and watched their reaction. It was like when a friend tells you he has terminal lung cancer. "You are sure?" Carol asked. "Very confident." "Couldn't you? There's always counseling. You guys were so good together. You can't just end it like that." "It's not me. It's her, Carol. She killed it, and maybe me, for all I know. I need to get tested for diseases. He's such a pig who knows what he caught and passed on to her, and she to me. Even if everything is purely, I live on autopilot. I feel like she ripped out my heart and took it with her when she left. She hugged me, and I just enjoyed the smell and feel of a woman holding me for a while." Bobby later admitted to an angry Carol that he was the one who told me about what Fox said that rocked my world. Carol was about to attack him when I stopped her. Too many people knew. Word would have spread. People would have laughed at me behind my back, and I would have found out sooner or later anyway. I'm glad he told me. "Is it true?" she asked. "The truth. I lived in a lie, in a dream world that wasn't real. I thought I had a marriage with a woman who loved me, and it was all wrong. No matter how much it hurts, it's better to know why not know. They wanted me to stay the night, but I needed to get used to my new life. I moved back to the condo. I just couldn't call it home anymore. Once again, I happily sank into the darkness of sleep. Sunday was bad, very bad. I went out when I woke up, showered and shaved, then ate a big breakfast. Afterwards, I walked along the Riverwalk and looked at the Friendship Fountain as it spewed in the morning sunlight on the other side of the St. John's River near the Museum of Science and History. I managed to kill enough time to go to a matinee at the cinema. I bought another ticket so I wouldn't have to leave the theater for almost 5 hours. After that, I drove to Jacksonville Beach and ordered unlimited crab legs. Found another movie I hadn't seen and spent another 2 hours. Then had a drink at a quiet bar called The Last Call not far from the condo. A Spaniard with thick black hair and light gray at the temples approached me as I sat at the bar drinking, one of the few 5 customers in the establishment. What did she do? I looked at my Johnny Walker glass with 1 ice cube and thought about the answer. To hell with it. Bartenders need to know everything. She broke my heart, trampled on it, and took it with her. Gone for another man. Kicked her out because he found out she was with another man for 6 months. Are you feeling better now? Yes, that's why I spent the longest day of my life trying to fill the void she left. Are you sure you did the right thing? The only thing I could do. He looked at me as he placed the glasses under the bar. I don't know much, but the one thing I've learned is that there is never just one right solution. There are always options. I finished my drink and asked, "How much do I owe you for wisdom?" He shrugged. "Nothing. I'm just a bartender. Good luck." January gave way to February, then March. I contacted a lawyer and completed the paperwork. Rox returned to the condominium twice while I was gone, and now there was no trace of her 8 years with me. People at work tried to avoid mentioning her name or asking about what happened between us, for which I had Bobby to thank. I had to monitor other stations, so I constantly saw Anderson anchoring the news and flirting with his colleagues, and every night I dreamed of punching his face. But nothing happened. I sent out inquiries and received offers from a station in Miami too close and in Nebraska too small and everything. There was always something going on at the Ritz, so I kept getting their press releases, usually written by Roxanne Hunter, and wondered when she would stop using my last name. We once covered a conference on advanced neurosurgery at the Ritz. As I watched the recording before I could stop, I saw her short comment about the conference. Filmed in the corridor. The light was good. Her hair is still the same fiery red. Her lips are like blood. Her eyes you can drown in. Her figure is still the same incredible in a business suit. I knew her too well and noticed the redness of her eyes, the pallor of her usually dark skin. But she smiled and tried to charm the reporter who was interviewing her. She was going to survive. I didn't miss sex. But there were nights when I brought home some pretty secretary or police girl and decided I wasn't in the mood. Those were the nights I drank until I passed out, no matter where I was. On a Friday evening in late March, the phone rang. I wasn't going out with anyone and didn't want to go out to eat, so I ordered a stuffed pizza from Papa John's, pulled out a six-pack of Michelob Light from the refrigerator that I now always kept on hand, and settled down to watch a Lord of the Rings marathon on Blu-ray. Tommy. I was silent for a long time. I wanted to hang up. I should have done it, but I didn't. Tommy, please don't hang up. What do you want, Rox? I want to come and talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Did you receive the documents? I got them last week. Then we have nothing to talk about. Everything is clear. We are just separating. We have no children. We will divide the savings. You will get your Audi. I will get my Mustang. We will sell the condominium unless you want to buy out my share. I do not plan to stay here in Jacksonville for a long time. No alimony or maintenance because we are both independent. Everything is as clean as possible. I'll sign the papers at your house if you want, but I want to talk to you face to face. I don't want to talk to you. It was pretty hard last time. I know. You scared me. I've never seen you like this. But judging by your voice, you got over it. Yes, I've been through the rage. Now I'm at the stage of pain and bitterness and nightmares about you and him together. I've come a long way. Please, Tommy, just 1 hour, and then I'll disappear from your life and never bother you again. Why don't you understand? I don't want to see you. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, that night you begged me to be honest with you. Just once in the 8 years we were together, and I couldn't. Now I'm asking you. We spent 8 years together. I know they were mostly good. You didn't give me 1 hour, just 1 hour in these 8 years. I knew I would say yes, because deep down I needed to know how I lost her. I could have left her behind and never known her, but it would have tormented me for the rest of my life. Okay, how soon will you be here? Oh, 30 seconds. The next minute, there was a knock on the door. I opened the door and saw her in a raincoat, holding a mobile phone in one hand and a small red purse in the other. She smiled at me, or at least tried to. Sorry, she said, picking up her cell phone. I didn't want to give you time to change your mind. The raincoat was expensive, bright red, tight, as sexy as a raincoat tied at the waist could be. But I was wrong. He became even sexier when she untied the belt and he fell down. She may have lost a few pounds, but her curves were still there. We had sex. For what? I finally asked. I wanted you. I wanted this. I wanted to be here. For what? I miss you. I didn't miss you. Liar. Carol is still mad at me, but she's talking. I know how you've been. I know you're looking to get out of town and get away from me. I turned on my side, leaning on my elbow, looking at her the way you tear the scab on a wound to enjoy the pain. I repeat, Rox, why are you here? When she didn't answer, I repeated, why? And then, it's nice that you missed sex with me, but there are a lot of guys out there you could be with. She looked at me, breathing heavily. I want to come back. I almost laughed. Will never happen. You'll sign the divorce papers before you leave. I'll sign. I know we'll get divorced. But this doesn't have to be the end. It ended in August, Rox. It ended the first night you slept with him. It's gone. I haven't been with him since a day. The day you secretly went to Atlanta for that seminar and did everything to him like he said. Did everything, you pathetic fucking bitch, and came back to me by lying. Since then, he called me a week after you kicked me out. I said no, I wasn't with anyone else. Why is this so hard for me to believe? You can investigate. You're good at it. Or I'll take a polygraph. By the way, I have the results of my blood tests in my purse. I got checked the next week after Atlanta and regularly since then. I knew you'd think about it. I'm clear of everything except one thing. I'm not sure, but everything seems fine. There's a new test that few people have heard of that shows indicators that something may be wrong. A friend checked on me and said everything seemed fine. I looked up at the night sky. It was clear, the stars twinkled as they did every night when we lay here. But everything else has changed. But you were willing to risk my life. You had sex with him privately at the Ritz, I know you did, and then you came back 3 nights later and did it to me. He's a fucking dog, rocks, and you knew it. He sleeps with anyone who moves. He may have 50 diseases, but you put me at risk. She tried to meet my gaze, but couldn't. I know. Do you think I don't understand? Not only did I cheat on you for 6 months, but I also put your life in danger, if I were you. She paused, then looked up at me. I wanted to say that I wouldn't take you back if you cheated on me and exposed me to illness, but that's a lie. I would be hurt and make you crawl back to me through hell, but I would bring you back because I love you. Do you love me? And I tried to put all my anger, sarcasm, and distrust into these 3 words. I love you, Tommy. Deep down you know it's true. I've been with many men before you and thought I was in love before, but it was never real. You were real. We were real. You are the man I want to grow old with. I want to be with you when we lie in adjacent beds in a nursing home. I want to die before you. So that's why you went back to him and kept sleeping with him. I could understand Ritz, you were drunk, and he was hot. This happened. He said you won't do it again that night. I could have survived it, but you came back to him. You couldn't love me and betray me for 6 months. I loved you, I love you, but he was so handsome. This is all. She finally looked me in the eyes. I'm superficial, I'm stupid, but he was just so damn attractive. I love you and I love our sex, but it was like putting your hand to fire. I knew I would get burned, but I couldn't stop. I didn't want to bring this up, but I couldn't help myself. He told me everything. He was proud of himself. She looked at her fingers for a long time. At this point, I was ready to give up everything. I started to get up. She grabbed my hand. Tommy, no need. You do not understand. Oh, I understand. I repeat, why? You still haven't answered me. Why do you want to be with me? You have a great career. You can have almost any man you want. God knows there have been enough guys to hit on you over the years. You're hotter now than when we met. You don't need my safety or sex. I already told you, I love you. It's not enough, Rocks. Even if I said I still love you, it's not enough. I can never trust you. You lied and cheated for 6 months. Because I met an incredibly hot guy and had to have him. News for you. The world is full of incredibly hot guys. Tell me you're telling the truth and you're done with Anderson. How can I be sure that next week or next month you won't meet another hot guy and won't be able to resist? She sat down without answering, her breast swaying, reminding me again of what I was missing. Do you have anything to drink? Another Michelin? In a refrigerator. She walked naked into the kitchen. She returned with the Michelin and took a long sip as she sat down opposite me in the love chair. When it first happened, that first night, I didn't plan for it. I really didn't plan it. I dreamed about him for months. Sexual dreams. And I thought that that night I would come back to your house and blow up your world, and you would never know that I slept with him in my head. I've done this before, and I know you have too. Don't you dare say that you never thought about sex with someone else in your head when you slept with me. I even know the names of a couple of them. Carol and I have been talking for a long time. She took another long sip and gargled it before swallowing. I still don't know how it happened. It's just we were drinking, and I had to be there until at least 10, and he was funny and charming, and I couldn't breathe inside, and it seemed like the most logical thing in the world to go outside with him for some fresh air, and then I couldn't stop. She fell silent for a minute. I was damn ashamed. I couldn't look at him, and I couldn't bear the thought of looking at you. That's why I stayed at the Ritz. But you came back to him again. Finally, she looked up at me. I'm back again. I kept thinking about him. I kept remembering that night. I tried to get him out of my head, but I couldn't. And I told myself that I would meet him to close this. But I knew what would happen. I won't lie to you about it. I just looked at her. I didn't need to choose words. I knew it would destroy you if you found out. I knew it wouldn't last, and that I would never live with him. I knew I would break your heart if you found out, but I still continued to date him. How could you? Because my life with you was in the same world. Where was I, Mrs. Tommy Hunter? I loved you, and we had a good marriage. When I was with him, you didn't exist. I wasn't married. All that mattered were those moments, those hours we spent in his car, in parks or cheap motels. All I could do was look at her. You probably never knew this, but do you know how you pestered me to quit smoking, and checked my clothes to see if there was a smell, and caught me 3 times, and I always got out of it by having sex with you. And you never knew that I smoked at work, and I had clothes there to change into while the ones that stank of tobacco were dry cleaned so you wouldn't find out. I lied to you about it, led a separate life where I could indulge my weaknesses, and you would never have known about it. I told myself that you are a controlling asshole, that I can smoke, and this is my body and my life. I told myself that every couple has their secrets. No matter how close they are, everyone has a small part of their individual life that they don't give up when they say I do. She finished her Michelob. I know it's crazy, but that's how I felt about him. He was my vice. It was bad and it was wrong, but as long as you didn't know it, it would be like my secret smoking. I got up and started getting dressed. I didn't look at her anymore. You need to get dressed and get out of here, Rocks. You said you would give me time to talk to you. You keep hurting me, Rocks. Do you want me to give you a butcher knife to finish the job? I tried to explain. Oh, you explained it, I said, tossing her her raincoat. You explained it, Rocks. You wanted him more than you wanted me. You knew you'd break my heart, and you went ahead anyway. You wanted him more than you wanted to grow old with me. I understand you very well. No, you don't understand. I never loved him and never dreamed of a life with him. I could be with him and do those things with him because he was never a threat to you, to us. And I was proud. I knew that you loved me. I think deep down, I believed that no matter what I did, you would always love me. I truly believed that you would forgive me no matter what I did. You were wrong about that, weren't you? I was in shock when I left that night. I went to my friend's apartment and just sat there and cried all night. I haven't worked for a week. She finally helped me pick up my things. I told her what I had done, and she said that you would never take me back, that I needed to start a new life without you. I couldn't believe it for a long time. We were forever. You should have forgiven me. You should have forgiven me. Your friend was right. She took the raincoat from my hands and put it on. Walking over to the dining table, she took the divorce papers out of her purse and signed them where she was supposed to. She looked at them on the table. Now everything was over except the official formalities. I never knew what true loneliness was, Tommy. I never knew this until the night I left here after you left. It was as if I was left alone in the world. Everyone else was just shadows. You were the only real thing, but you were gone, and since then I've been alone, at work, with friends. There were no other men, but even if I slept with one of them, I would still be alone. I never knew loneliness could hurt so much. She walked to the door, opened it, and stopped. I know I broke your heart. I know I hurt you. But if it helps, I broke my heart too. The divorce was finalized. There was nothing worth fighting for, and I insisted that everything be processed as quickly as possible. There were no children or property to divide. It was as if we never existed, just a piece of paper. At the end of July, we filmed ceremonies in honor of those who fell in the courthouse massacre 6 years ago. The church bells rang again and again in honor of the police officers, lawyers, and innocent victims of the massacre. There were no calls for their killers. The ceremonies took place at the old court on Bay Street, which had just closed as a new, more than $300 million court opened a few blocks away. At the crossroads of the business community, influential and political leaders black and white gathered that evening at the Prime Osborne Convention Center, the city's old railroad hub, and now the city's largest public meeting space. It was $500 a plate dinner to raise money for the families of fallen police officers. All local stations and all major networks were present. It wasn't as big of a deal as it once was, but it still made national news on the anniversary. Someone had to be there, and Nick Carnos decided he wanted to be with his wife and children. Since I no longer had a life, he asked me to represent the station, and I agreed. Normally, I would be busy directing cameras and conducting interviews, but this time all I had to do was eat, maybe dance a little, and stay awake during the pre- and post-meal speeches. Christina D'Alessandro was my partner, and it was funny to watch the expressions on the faces of wealthy businessmen, powerful politicians, and their wives as Christina walked in holding my hand. She was tall, with black hair that fell to her buttocks, having let it fall freely for the first time rather than keeping it in a strict, businesslike bun, as she usually did on air. Watching her walk with her hair down, curious glances appeared everywhere. She didn't look like her at all, but she had that sophisticated Grace Kelly aura, only brunette. She knew what she had. She was wearing a black dress that covered almost her entire back and showed just a hint of her breasts, and she was still hotter than some of the half-naked women in the room. She was almost as tall as me, taller than rocks. She had the shape of a model, except for those damn breasts, and she carried her back like a Marine, which showed them off in all their glory. I whispered to her as we were shown to our seats, "Why don't you slouch a little before you cause a riot?" She half glanced at me and, keeping a straight face, whispered back, "Why, Mr. Benehunter, are you making a sexist remark about my breasts?" I tried to keep a straight face. "Just turn down your sexiness by at least 4 notes, okay?" I didn't even try. I couldn't hide my smile. I know. That's what's scary. As we sat down, I was buttering a bun well, I was buttering my bun, and Christina seemed to be living with the flavors of the food. Since I'd never seen her eat real food, a blonde guy walked up to us with a woman behind him. I stood up to shake his hand. "Dave." "Tommy." He brought the plump but attractive blonde over, and she shook my hand while Dave held out Christina's hand. She looked at Christina with an expression that I was sure was meant to be friendly, but women couldn't, bless their hearts, pretend in her presence. There was almost a distinct expression of, "Don't you dare even think about my man," as she looked over Christina's face, body, and hair. "I think you know him, Christina, but this gentleman is State Attorney Dave Brandon and his wife Darlene." Brandon turned to his wife and said, "Honey, this is Tommy Hunter, news director at Channel 12, and this is Christina." His wife finished, "Dallas. I'm sure there isn't a wife in Jacksonville who doesn't know who Miss Dallas is." "Glad to see you here, Tommy. And you, Miss Dallas, I hope you don't mind, but I have to work with the guests. Politics never stops." He left, and I understood everything. He was elected in 2010 and had 2 years remaining to secure another 4-year term. He had some big shoes to fill, and there had been a lot of turmoil in this office in recent years. There will be rivals, and this has actually been a 4-year campaign. Political conversations and walking around the hall continued, and finally the food was served. Then the speeches began, led by Mayor Alvin Brown, who was not up for re-election for 3 years, so luckily he just gave a short speech and sat down. I really enjoyed seeing Christina putting solid food into the mouth. It was just a few pieces of lettuce and 1 small piece of lobster, but it was something. Even when she was chewing, she was sexy as hell. She might have been married hundreds of times, but she had a will of steel and was focused on achieving national networks. Then the speeches finally ended and the center of the huge hall cleared, An orchestra of men and women in their 50s and 60s began playing slow songs from the 80s and 90s, and couples began to rise to dance. Christina lasted about 7 seconds until the first tall, handsome guy came up to her and asked her to dance. She glanced at me, but it was a work date. I nodded, and she straightened up to her full height, sliding onto the dance floor. They kept her there for half a dozen dances while I drank my coffee after dinner, until I looked up and saw her standing in front of me with her hand outstretched. "You're giving me a complex, Mr. Hunter." I just grinned, stood up, and we went out onto the dance floor. She was perfect for my embrace, except for those damn breasts. Rox had them bigger, but she was tighter. Christina was all graceful bones and waist, except for those breasts. I, like every other guy at the station or in Jacksonville, wondered, but she insisted that everything she had came with the original packaging. "Are you saying that they are completely real?" She gave me a sly look when I asked her at the station party shortly after she arrived, and then nodded and told the story. Few people have heard this story. Christina Dallas was a very private person. I was a skinny little girl until I was 15, straight and without shapes. And then, boom, in one summer I became 36D. No one on my mother's or father's side could figure it out until they found a photo of my paternal grandmother in an old Bible. The photo was taken in the 40s, and she looked like me. They say my grandfather met her on a blind date when he was 20. He married her 3 months later, and they never slept apart for 50 years until she got cancer and died. We did a few slow dances until someone came up and tapped her on the shoulder. I was lost in those black eyes until I looked up and saw a familiar face behind her. "Rox, can I dance?" Christina looked at me and then at her. "Just one dance, Tommy. One dance. I promise not to attack you." "Leave. I'm not trying to cause a scene. I paid $500 to be here tonight. One dance." "You said you would leave and not bother me." "I lied. You'll have time for more dances with your partner. Don't make me beg." Christina walked away from me and just looked at me, then walked back to our table. Of course, she didn't have time to get there. She was stopped midway and was back on the dance floor with someone else. I opened my arms and Rox came up to me, and we started swaying to the music. She laid her head on my shoulder, and I remembered the conversation I had with Robert Anderson. "You're a fucking cheating bitch." "I know." After a pause. "Why are you here?" "Because you are here. It'll be this way forever." Forever. I didn't want this. I struggled. I thought about pictures of people suffering from horrible meat-eating bacteria, about starving children in Africa, about the worst police pictures of crime scenes where blood and body parts were strewn everywhere. She looked at me and smiled that sultry smile and kissed me. Finally, she pulled away. "I'm going to the toilets. I'll wait there. You can lie all you want, but your body tells me that's what you want too." She swayed away from me, like a shark passing through herds of people standing in shallow water. When she approached, men's gazes were drawn to her and remained on her until she passed by. She definitely knew how to get out. I stood there, breathing heavily, not caring that anyone could see the effect she had on me. Then I followed her, knowing how crazy I was. The toilets were down the long hallway and towards the back of the building. When I saw her, I took her hand and she followed me outside into the back parking lot. As soon as we left, she pulled me into a corner. Finally, somehow, I pushed her away. "Tommy." I put my hand on her lips and she stopped talking. "That's not going to happen. Rox, that's why I came out. You drove me crazy, but that won't happen. I want you to know this. You must stop." She stepped away from me. "Okay, that won't happen, not today. You and that bony one bitch, and you like her, so maybe you have the willpower to stop, but I won't stop. There will be other nights. I will appear at your house. I will be at meetings where you will be. You won't be able to say no every time, and one day you won't be able to deny that you still love me, still want me." "I don't love you, Rox. I don't know why you decided that I still love you. I divorced you. I kicked you out." I did my best to stay away from you. What else can I do but charter a plane with a banner that says it's over, rocks? Except to accept a job in another city. Damn Carol and her chatter. You had 4 very good offers from other stations around the country when you were looking, after you told Bobby and the people at the station that you didn't want to stay here. But every time you find something wrong with the proposal, there are some reasons why you cannot accept it. But we both know the real reason. You won't leave because I'm here. I could have stopped you, apply for a restraining order to keep you away from me, to stop you from stalking me. You could, and you could make me a laughing stock, destroy me, maybe send me to jail, but I'll do it anyway, and you gotta do what you gotta do. Could you send me to jail because I can't stop loving you? I looked at her dark beauty, at that body that men had been chasing for as long as I knew her, and I still couldn't believe her actions. Have you no pride, Rocks? What kind of person can't let go of someone who doesn't love them anymore? No, where you are concerned, I have no pride. I reached out and touched her cheek. She held my hand in hers. Please, Rocks, let it go. Our marriage is over and will never be repaired. I told you I can't trust you. Even if I wanted to, I will always follow you, watch your every move, record your calls, and come unannounced. I would treat you like a prisoner. You couldn't live like that. You think you can, but you can't. It would get to you. You would start to hate me because I can never forget your affair with Anderson. Nobody wants to be punished their whole life for one mistake. She shook her head. I don't blame you for not trusting me, maybe never. I know I convinced myself that I could be with Robert and it wouldn't ruin our marriage, but it did. I lost you. I realized that there is nothing in the world, not a single man, that is worth losing you again. Now you may have to put up with me showing up at the station, but I will never let another man have me again. I got burned, and there's no need to get burned twice. She paused, as if searching for words. I know our marriage is over. I know it's destroyed, but you can mend a broken vase. You can put the pieces back together. She will never be the vase she was, but it can still be a vase. Even if I get you back, I know we will never have the marriage we had. I know that you will never trust me the same way. You will never love me the same way. She stepped forward and kissed me so hard that my lips hurt. It may be a lousy marriage, it may be a broken marriage, but it's better than no marriage. It's better than living the rest of my life without you. Maybe it won't work, maybe we won't be able to overcome it, but all I want is a chance. Last chance. She turned and walked away, leaving me with the hardest decision of my life. I stood behind Christina as she opened the door to her Atlantic Beach apartment. It was after midnight, lights and music were coming from the neighboring apartments, and half a block away there was a bar with raw food. It was a place for young people with high incomes. She turned on the living room light as we entered. Get a beer from the kitchen, she said as she walked towards her bedroom. I bought Miquelin. Thank you. Over her shoulder she said, I need to take these things off. I'm not a fan of evening dresses. Despite her appearance, she was a jeans and t-shirt girl, as I had learned over the past year. On the few occasions I saw her in a social setting away from the station and fans, she would tie that long flowing hair into a thick ponytail and just forget she had it. She didn't require much care. I went into the kitchen. When she said kitchen, she meant refrigerator. I opened it and took out Miquelin Light. I started drinking them 5 years ago when Rock started making fun of me for having a little bump in my belly. I started going to the gym and switched from Miquelin Light. I knew the light was for me. Christina was a fan of white wine. I took a glass and poured her a generous portion. She said it relieved stress. So much better. I turned towards the entrance to the kitchen. She stood there in all her nakedness, her hair flowing around her, her magnificent legs highlighted by the 4-inch heels she now wore. Much better. Do you like it? She said, swaying into the room, those incredible breasts moving with every step. I always like it. Then we made love. As I lay there, she said softly, so this is goodbye. Words didn't come to me. She rose to one elbow and looked at me with what I took to be sadness. I knew it when you came back to her tonight. You'll come back to her, won't you? And after a pause, it's okay, Tommy. It was never real. We were never really there. I knew it. It was quite real. Just. Do you love her? You're in love with her. Maybe. She lay there and ran her hand through my dirty blonde hair. I shouldn't say this, Tommy, because it will inflate your ego, but for a while after you found out about her and Anderson, I almost thought we had a chance. I looked at her in amazement. You and me? Hating the look on her face, I added, I'm 15 years older than you, Chris. I never thought, never imagined, that you and I... You are attractive, a good husband, and a loving person. Why don't I imagine something between us, especially after that first time? Sorry, Chris. I never thought about it. I'm older than you, and you're incredibly beautiful, and there are tens of thousands of younger, richer, better guys who will grab you if you give them even a hint of encouragement. Besides, you're going to make it to the top. You will be an international name with your whole life and career ahead of you. I am not ancient, and I still hope to succeed, but not like you. You are special. She smiled. You say such sweet things, but yeah, I know, the first time. It just happened. I never expected that I would be infatuated. With you. You are the most married man I know. You never stared at me, you never treated me like a piece of meat, and I thought you were so into her that you never noticed me. I noticed. And I don't date married men. And I never cheated on rocks. Until that night. She leaned in to kiss me, and I couldn't help but compare her kisses with rocks. She was a dream come true, but something inside me still craved rocks. I knew what it was and never thought I would insist. But when I found out about that recording... How are you? One of the guys from Channel 4, who has been hitting on me since I got here, showed me this. Everyone who saw it knew that she slept with him. It was written all over her face. But you were so in love with her that I kept silent. I thought you'd find out, and when you did you'd quit her, and you quit. But... She simply shook her head. I couldn't handle it. We were. Just one of those moments. She is your heart. I couldn't fight it. Nothing is guaranteed, Chris, even now. It's just, I have to try, and if I'm going to start a new marriage, I can't. Be with you. She kissed me again. I understand, Tommy. I understand. I think I understand. I've never loved anyone like this, but I hope that someday I will fall in love. Trust me, you will have choices, and you will be easy to love. Except for you. Not by my choice. When I met her, I thought she was just hot. The hottest I've ever had, but sometimes it happens, and you usually don't see it in advance. This will probably happen to you. I hope that it will be like that. Despite how bad things are now, we were once good. I got up and got dressed. I've never stayed overnight. I never stayed longer than could be explained as a social visit. We never left together. There was no touching, no personal glances at the station, which meant that opportunities to be together were rare. It was like very expensive, ultra-rich chocolate. I couldn't eat it often, but it was wonderful when I did. I was proud that no one at the station, including my best friend Bobby and the people I worked with on a daily basis, had any idea that there was anything between us. When it started, I was married happily, I thought, and I couldn't explain it or risk ruining my marriage. It was an anomaly, something that had never happened before, and I knew would never happen again. It would end when she left, and we both knew it. More importantly, she couldn't let it be known that she was having sex with her boss. She had an impeccable reputation as a tough, no-nonsense news professional. Rumors of women sleeping with bosses for promotion had hurt other beautiful women in the news industry, and she was determined to rise to the top with integrity. That was another one of the things I liked about her. I paused at the door before opening it. There was no chance that someone with a camera was waiting outside her apartment, but I was there for 2 hours. I could chalk it up to a few drinks and a conversation about business if anyone questioned me. I couldn't explain the kiss or the touch in the wrong place when I came out. I was dressed the same as when I entered. She wore a decent blouse and her usual comfortable jeans. Likewise, we always made sure that all the curtains were tightly closed. Paranoia? Maybe, but in today's news environment, you can't be too careful. I took her long, slender body into my arms. You need to update your records and resume and pack your bags. There is a station in San Diego that has an opening for a female morning anchor position. I showed the station manager one of your recordings. They definitely want you as soon as we let you go. And San Diego is just one hop away from the Los Angeles market. You're ready to take off. She leaned back and smiled. Trying to get rid of me, huh? Tired of me already? I kissed her again. It was wrong, I was wrong, but I couldn't hold on even if there was a cliff in front of me. It will be easier to make it work with rocks without you around, that's true, but you deserve it. You've put in the time and you're ready. I'll miss you, Tommy Hunter. Don't look back, Chris. You have a long road ahead of you, and I am history. It was 2:30 a.m. when I returned to your apartment. I picked up my home phone and dialed a familiar number. It rang 6 times. Tommy, you took a long time to answer. Were you with someone? Is Anderson there? I was waiting for your call and fell asleep, and I'm alone. Are you with this bitch? Her name is Christina, and it was a business meeting. We worked together. Oh, please. If you're not with her, then I bet you just left her. Is she good? These breasts are fake. You know that, right? I almost fell for it and told her they were real, but I held back. Just because you sleep with just anyone doesn't mean everyone is like that. Nonsense, Tommy. You know that's not true. I was married to you for 8 years. You may be deceiving the people at the station, but I know you. You're sleeping with her. Rocks. Listen, don't talk nonsense. I know how much you love to gossip, and this will damage her. For me, it will bring nothing but hatred from all the guys at the station, but it goes up the ladder. It will hurt her. She is a good girl. She fell silent again. So she's a good girl, and you don't want her to get hurt. Do you really care about her? I like her, Rocks, but this is different. I don't love her, but you probably don't understand the difference. I know the difference. After a pause. So why did you call? I was thinking about what you said. And, at least you're honest. Our marriage is over. What we had is gone. But what? We can try. I still don't see how this could work. I think you're setting us both up for a lot of pain in the future. But you're as stubborn as a donkey, and you probably won't stop. And deep down, you don't want me to stop. Your pride simply won't allow you to admit it. But we will overcome this. Anderson was just a stupid mistake, a big mistake, but he never meant anything to me. I saw the way you looked at him at the banquet. You don't look at a man that way if he doesn't mean anything to you. I thought I was the only man you looked at like that in 8 years, but I was wrong. We all make mistakes, Tommy. I just made the biggest mistake, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making it right if you'll let me. That's what I was thinking. We are now free. We only have a common past. We were married. I can date others. You can date others. I want you to be sure this time that I am the person you want to be with in the future. I don't want to risk you getting hurt like that again. It doesn't matter, Tommy. You are the man I want. I expect to get all the sex I want from you, whether we're married or not. And you won't find anyone who will turn you inside out the way I'm going to do. I sat in the apartment that was our home and looked at the stars through the panoramic window. I still had a bad feeling about our future together, but I understood how you can get into a situation that you never planned, how you can do something that is not typical for you. I understood how you could betray someone you love, but the difference was that I always knew that Chris simply liked me. I loved Rocks. It felt completely different when I was betrayed. But I knew I had feelings for Chris. Feelings that I will never fulfill because she is too young, I am too old. I am not going to be the anchor that pulls her down on her way to the top. No matter what I tell myself that I still have a future on the top. Even if there was no Rocks, I was realistic enough to realize that couples like me and Chris never last long. It wasn't just the age difference. She'll move in circles where I'll look weird, then funny, then shameful, and eventually she'll find the right man to be with. I cheated on rocks and developed feelings for another woman, but I still loved my ex-wife. This was terribly confusing to me. Tommy, I realized that I had been silent for a long time. Just thinking, rocks. How about dinner at Benny's next Wednesday night? I can be there at 6. Can we do it? Dinner at Benny's. Great place, but we've been having sex since the first night we met, and I know we will again. But let's imagine that we are exes who haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's start with dinner, dancing, and a movie. Let's go for a walk on the beach in St. Augustine and feed the seagulls. We haven't walked on the beach in a long time, Tommy. I know. Let's start slow this time. So I'll have to seduce you again. If you can. She laughed, that deep, sensual, hot laugh. You were an easy target. It may not be so easy this time. You won't regret it, Tommy. And why don't you grab a couple sets of casual clothes when I pick you up? You can leave them here, just in case you want to stay overnight for a while, someday. This time she fell silent. That would be good, Tommy. I think I'll see you on Wednesday. I love you. I lay on the carpet, looking at the stars until I fell asleep, and for some unknown reason, I felt better than I had in months. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.